cheating on his wife and seducing the young neighbor girl. I was out in the backyard tending to the flower beds, but I managed to get very little done in an hour's work. The reason for the lack of progress was that she was sitting in a chaise lounge 60 feet away from me and wearing 2 strips of yellow cloth, no bigger than a Band-Aid, on a body that was designed by the devil to cause trouble for men like me. I've been casting glances at Amber since she was a toddler. It's very hard not to look at a 15-year-old girl who looks and acts 21. The problem was that Amber knew what she had, knew what it did to men, knew what it did to her, knew what it led to, and knew that men knew that because of her age they wouldn't dare do or say anything. And knowing she was safe, she became a terrible flirt and the biggest tease I've ever seen. No, not horrible, mean. Amber did everything except outright ask you to have sex with her, knowing that unless you were terminally stupid, you would turn and run from her like the devil was chasing you, which in a way, he probably was. Believe me, it's really hard when Amber lives in your neighborhood. And 9 months ago, Amber turned 18, and all the flirting and teasing stopped. Amber wasn't stupid. She understood that with turning 18, the rules of the game change. She wasn't actually teasing me while I was working or trying to work on my flower bed, just sunbathing in my own backyard, but even though I knew that this gorgeous view wasn't really meant for me, I couldn't help but stare. Although I did cast glances at Amber, Amber was always safe from me. I was happily married, never cheated on my Annie, and never hoped I ever would. I finally managed to tear my gaze away from Amber and went back to pulling weeds. With my head down, I was digging in the dirt when I felt someone standing behind me, and when I turned around, I saw Amber standing there. She smiled at me. "I thought it would be easier on your eyes if you didn't have to look that far away." I was dumbfounded and couldn't think of what to say back. "Go ahead and play in your dirt," she said, "and I'll just sit here and we can watch each other." That, of course, was impossible. It was one thing to have Amber 60 feet away from me, and quite another to have her at arm's length. After 5 minutes of trying, I dropped the dustpan and turned to Amber. "Why are you doing this, Amber?" She bestowed me with a 1,000-watt smile. "Maybe I like older men and you turn me on. Besides, you've never hit on me and I think it's time you did." I just stared at her and she stared at me. Finally, I managed to whisper, "I haven't made an attempt at you because you're too young." "Not anymore. I've been 18 for over 9 months now." "Maybe so, but I'm married and I'm not cheating on my wife." "Why not? She's cheating on you." The look on my face must have said it all. "You didn't know? Oh, Mr. Hanson, I always thought you were a cool dude. You mean to tell me that your wife has been cheating on you for 5 years and you have no idea?" 5 years? Maybe longer, I don't know, but 5 years is how long I've known about it. "How do you know?" "I've seen her." "I don't believe that. You must be mistaken. Annie would never do that to me, and even if she had, I would have seen some sign, I would have noticed something." "That's called denial, Mr. Hanson. I told you I saw her." "With whom?" "With my father and brother." "I'm sorry, Amber, but I don't believe you." "Do you want to see it? They do it every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday when my mom does charity work at church." "Bullshit, Amber. It couldn't have gone on as long as you say without your mom finding out." "I didn't say she doesn't know, she just doesn't care." "Why?" "Her charity work is to make sure the good Reverend Bob is satisfied, and as long as Dad ignores that, she doesn't care what he does to your wife." I had a hard time believing what she was telling me. I couldn't believe it. Annie is screwing around with me, and for over 5 years? Impossible. Still, Amber seemed very confident, so we sat down at the picnic table and I asked her to tell me what she knew. According to Amber, it all started back when I was traveling on business for my company, before I had a job. Annie hired Lance to watch the yard since I was often away. One day, Lance bragged to Amber about having sex with Annie. He said he came to pick up money for yard work and she was sunbathing in the backyard. She asked him to rub lotion on her and then took him into the house. and had sex with him. Amber didn't believe him. For the next year, Lance bragged about sleeping with Annie 2 or 3 times a week, and Amber continued to bullshit. One Monday after I stopped traveling and started staying home, Lance told Amber that if she didn't believe him, she should hide in his closet. He told her that Annie didn't want to do that in our house anymore because I might come home one day and catch them. 15 minutes after Amber went into the closet, Annie and Lance came into the room and Amber watched her brother and my wife have sex on the bed right in front of her for over 2 hours. It was great. Amber was interested in watching it, and she asked Lance to let her know from now on so she could watch. She's watched them at least 100 times, she said. And about 2 years ago, she was sitting in a closet watching, and Lance and Annie were making so much noise that she didn't hear her father come home. He heard the noise and came over to see what was going on. He came into the room and watched them for a minute or two until they noticed him. And then Annie tried to push Lance away from her until she noticed Amber's dad undressing. And then she smiled and went back to taking care of Lance. And then things had gone from there. For the past 2 years, she's watched my wife make love to both her father and her brother, and always on a Monday, Wednesday, or Friday. She looks very sprightly when she has sex with both of them. It makes me so hot, I'm going to find out what it feels like someday. I sat there shaking my head in bewilderment as Amber told me that my wife had been making love to me for over 5 years, and with not one but 2 guys. And did I really know there were only 2 of them? I had no idea about them, so who knows how many more there might be or could have been. Amber was too unequivocal for me to doubt her. I only had one question, and I asked it. Why are you telling me all this, Amber? Because I'm tired of boys. I've watched both my father and my brother with your wife, and it's obvious that my father is the better lover. And I've decided it's because he's experienced. That's what I want. Why me? Because I don't have to spend a lot of time playing games. All I have to do is tell you what your little wife is up to, and then I can help you get even, right? I don't need to spend weeks fishing for you and trying to seduce you or trick you into seducing me. I want what your wife gets after having sex with her, and no boy my age will do that, but you will, won't you? This girl was definitely older than her years, and what's more, she was right. But I needed more than just a story. I needed proof. Which is why I found myself in my bedroom closet at 11:30 on Monday. I called in sick, then killed time until Amber could sneak me into Lance's bedroom closet. While I waited, I tried to figure out why Annie was doing this. There was nothing wrong with our life, at least I hadn't noticed it. Sure, it was a little erratic, sometimes 5 or 6 times a week, and sometimes only 3 or 4. But I was always ready, willing, and able when she wanted to make love to me, and she never said no when I wanted to. I didn't notice any change in our relationship. We still hugged and kissed and snuggled together often. I just couldn't understand it. My musings were interrupted by voices in the hallway, and then the bedroom door opened, and all doubt about what Amber had told me vanished. Annie came into the room, pulling her blouse over her head. Lance stood behind her and removed her clothes as she walked. Annie wasn't wearing a bra, and when she stepped out of her shorts, I saw that she wasn't wearing panties either. Nothing like coming prepared. I was angry, but also turned on by how attractive Annie looked, standing in front of a child half her age. I was beginning to realize what Amber meant when she said watching them was highly arousing. Lance and my wife were having sex, and I watched in fascination at what was happening. Amber made me promise not to make a mess in Lance's closet. I thought that was unfair. He could make a mess of my wife, but I couldn't make a mess of his closet. The moment I made the promise, I thought she was crazy for even thinking I could do something like that, but not now. It took Lance almost 10 minutes to comfort my wife a second time, and I spent most of that time watching Annie's facial expression change as she had sex. After they finished, she crouched on the edge of the bed and reached for his body again, but Lance pushed her away. I can't, Mrs. Hanson. I have to get ready for work. Come on, darling, one more time, please? I can't. I was late twice last week. One more time and I could lose my job. That was the part that worried Amber. While she watched Lance, He always walked Annie to the front door when they were done, but there was still the possibility that he wouldn't do that and instead go to the closet to grab his clothes and get ready for work. At the moment she'd told me this, I hadn't cared, because it meant a confrontation would happen sooner rather than later. But now I wasn't sure what I wanted. I held my breath, but the two of them got out of bed. Annie grabbed her clothes and started to put them on as she and Lance left the room. As soon as they left the room, I pulled off my t-shirt and tucked myself behind the closet door. 15 seconds later, Amber poked her head through the door and motioned for me to hurry out of the closet. We ducked into her bedroom and waited until we heard the shower running, and then Amber led me out of the house. I sat at the Denny's and thought about what I had seen. I was upset, angry, and hurt that Annie could do this to me, but I also had a couple problems. I was as horny as I had ever been in my life, and I wanted to see it again. If I confronted Annie, and God knows I wanted to, I'd never get the chance to see it again. The other problem was the contradiction. I loved Annie, but I couldn't live with a woman who could do what she had done to me. But how could I love her, not be able to live with what she did to me, and yet want her to do it again? My thoughts were interrupted when Amber slid into the booth across from me, ready to start wagering. It was a shame, but as gorgeous and attractive as Amber was, she wouldn't be in the motel room with me. Oh, her body would be there, but my thoughts would be occupied with Annie on her hands and knees, looking at the closet where I'd stared into her eyes again while Lance had sex with her. In time, I might like Amber on her own, but right now I just had to make her happy. She was my key to Lance's closet door. The end! Subscribe to my channel. Thank you!